Oh no, guys, this is going to be information that is going to be not only riveting, but I would like it to be motivational for you on several reasons. One, to help not only yourself fight for your own personal medical freedom, but to help your friends and family fight for theirs. Because if you really believe in freedom, you also need to believe in medical freedom. And like me, I have a personal path. I know you all noticed I've lost a little weight over the last few months. And some of that is because, thank you, because I started a couple of years ago following a medical freedom path. And then when you start zeroing in on it, you start feeling better, you realize, and then your eyes open to how medical freedom is connected to politics. And then when you realize how it's connected to politics, your mind opens up a little bit more like mine did when it came to freedom. So when I was asked to do MAGA Fest, I said it's got to be informational. You've heard this story yesterday, that I wanted to be more informational than rah-rah, because when you really truly connect with information, you leave with arrows in your quiver that will last you forever. The rah-rah just lasts you a couple of days. The information lasts you forever, and then you want to start sharing it with others. And when you start opening others' eyes up to all their freedoms, you realize we start to save this country. On the panel today is a personal friend of mine, and one of my favorite people is Dr. Kathy Willis. After that, thank you, you're going to meet Anthony Luzak. Now, he pronounces his name Luzak, but I like to pronounce it Lutzak. It's L-U-C, because I'm lucky to have him as a friend. And a new friend is Dr. Sarah Duyon, the French pronunciation of Duhon. And I'm saying this so you can kind of do that. But all of these people are not only have great information in this panel, but they're going to be people that you're going to want to talk to afterwards, find out about their services, because they are going to be somebody that helps you on your own personal journey. All right. Dr. Kathy Willis, thank you so much. You're the one who put this group together for us.
Well, I did, and it's always a pleasure to work with you, William. You've been a great friend since we met at the Capitol several years ago. And I was trying to record a video, and you were so kind to come up and give me some of your AV equipment, because I was having some trouble. So I thank you for that. Did you want me to do a little?
Yeah, would you talk about yourself a little bit?
And first of all, also I want to thank Clay, Cangelucci, and William, and the others. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting someone or not aware of others who put this event on. Thank you so much for having us. It's so important for us to gather and talk about these issues freely and openly. So anyway, I'm Dr. Kathleen Willis. I am a Louisiana physician of 25 years. I trained at Charity in New Orleans. I'm an internal medicine physician. I got into this arena, and this is how I met William, because I was fired in 2022 for not taking the vaccine. They didn't have an exemption for safety concerns. So I didn't fill an exemption out. That is my story, and that is how I'm here with you today.
And Anthony?
My name is Anthony Luzak. I'm a certified pediatric nurse practitioner in primary care and a pediatric mental health specialist. So I'm a developmental behavioral specialist. It's for the children, like the Blues Brothers. I went to Yale School of Nursing, graduated in 2014, and I came down here. The Fed was convinced that I wanted to work in a part of the country that really needed primary care in pediatrics, and so it was a scholarship that I got in grad school. And I love working with my patients in Louisiana, and I've been here ever since.
Saving children, yet another way of saving children. In a little while, I've got a speaker later on who's talking about what he's doing to save children. Hal Hutchinson's coming on in a couple hours, And Sarah, how about yourself?
So I'm Dr. Sarah Duyon. I'm a naturopathic physician here, or in Baton Rouge. I started off as a nurse, working hospital rounds, and ended up going to mother-baby care. And in that process, there was one incident where I gave a vaccine to a newborn baby, and they had a seizure in front of me, and I said I have to take a different path. I don't really believe in what I'm doing and taking those parents not being fully educated on the choices that they're making for these children. I also fought, on those battle lines when I was a nurse for those years of saying I don't want to get a flu vaccine, but I wasn't given a choice and had to go from hospital to hospital until finally I just switched professions. I went to a naturopathic medical school in San Diego called Bastyr University. And there's probably only, at this point, 10 physicians with our accreditation in the state of Louisiana, and that's because we are an unlicensed state. So everyone that's here has come here basically to say, I'm going to give up all of my scope of practice just to help people until we become a licensed state. So we are not considered primary care and covered by insurance in this state, and that's what we're trying to push forward with this knowledge of medical freedom for you to be allowed choices on the type of medical care that you want. So if you wanted to maybe choose a route that wasn't pharmaceutical and you wanted to get insurance to pay for knowledge of nutrition or nutraceuticals or physical modalities, that's kind of the realm that we operate in, and we're pushing for that now in the state of Louisiana.
Thank you for the boldness. I appreciate that. Kathy, what does medical freedom mean to you?
Well, William, just hearing what Sarah had to say, I think that, what medical freedom means is much deeper than the surface of I'm free to do what I want with my body. Because what she just explained to you was we can be free, yes, you can fill out an exemption, but if you go see her, your insurance isn't going to cover what care she provides to you. So is that truly medical freedom? No, because you are, what's the word I'm looking for? Not doing, you're indirectly, right? You're indirectly prevented from getting the type of care that you want, or at least an opinion, because your insurance won't pay for it. So, if you look at it in that sense, I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but what she was saying just struck me as, no matter what we think and what we can say, what we want to do with our body, we may be prevented from carrying that out due to other pressures, right? And so, but to answer your question more directly, medical freedom is the ability to do what you want with your body for your own health, to make decisions, to have choices, and not be so pushed into a sort of, I hate to use the word standard of care, but that's just, that's the way it is right now in healthcare. There's a certain way to do something and to take care of a certain disease, and if you don't follow that path, well then that doctor's not following the standard of care. So anyway, you need to be able to guide how you want your healthcare to be carried out. You need to be able to make your choices if you want to try some alternative medicine or, a new cure, so to speak, that you've heard on the internet. If you want to try it, that should be up to you. And so, we could talk. I could talk a long time for that, but I'm going to let the other folks chime in here because I'm sure they'll have different perspective.
You might be fighting for that microphone up with Anthony.
I know.
Well, I would say Anthony is super smart with lots of good things to say. What does medical freedom mean to you? Anthony, how's it changed that you've seen?
How has it changed?
Well, what's medical freedom mean to you first?
So medical freedom to me, I think it has to do with growing up. I would go out and spend the summer with my grandmother. And my grandma, Babchagina, she was a survivor from the work camps in Dachau. And so one way to understand what something is to look at what it's not, right? And what medical freedom is not is coercion, right? So it's not some agent forcing experimentation, forcing you to comply, right? Like we saw in Dachau and the other camps, right? And so for me, that is a fundamental aspect of what medical freedom is. And when we look at things like the Nuremberg Code, when we look at things like the traditional teaching of informed consent in the practice of any professional, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a naturopath, any healthcare setting, there needs to be informed consent. And informed consent has to include the financial interests of me, the provider of the healthcare. Our current system blinds us all from the financial incentives of the people that provide the care. We call them, performance incentives. The third-party payers, the insurance companies, reduce the rates of reimbursement for health care, and then they incentivize based on performance whatever they want. And whether or not that's good, it might be good things. But are you being told that your doctor gets extra money if you are compliant with filling your blood pressure medicine script? And it's probably a good, okay thing, maybe, I don't know. I'm a pediatric provider. I'm not trying to knock blood pressure medicine. I'm not. But the point is, that's a performance incentive, and it should be disclosed. And the absence of that disclosure marks a violation of the sacred relationship between you and your healthcare provider. And they're not telling you about it because they don't even see it, because it's cooked into the system. So medical freedom to me is you and me demanding that our rights be held true.
Anthony, that's amazing. I could not have said it better. I simply say we all need to work together for medical freedom. That was a better way to say it. Thank you so much. Sarah, what does medical freedom mean to you, and how have you seen it change?
I don't know if I've seen it change. A lot of people, it was obvious during COVID because it was a pandemic and it happened, but this has been the fight that I've been fighting for 12 years now. That I was targeted 12 years ago without having that right to choose what I wanted in my body. But in general, medical freedom to me is the physician as an educator, as a teacher, not as some hierarchy where they are demanding something of you, but an educator and the patient becoming educated with this informed consent. Here's the risk-benefit analysis for me as an individual, and walking out that door making an empowered choice and not being ostracized and not being demonized for making a choice that was best for you and your body. So when we talk about medical freedom, let's say, vaccine's a hot topic, right? And I'm not like this anti-vaxxer person, but I would be qualified as that in certain groups for sure. But I in my education courses for parents on this, and now it had to extend to adults after COVID, was simply like, what are your genetics? How do you think your body will respond to this? What are your risks of not being vaccinated? What is the benefit of it? What is the percentage here and percentage there? Let's actually look at the details of it, and then you make an informed decision based on that for you and your family, and there's no judgment on that. And that's true freedom, is you're making that choice for you and not being scared into a choice by your medical provider or the government. That has no place in medicine, period. But it's also extending that medical freedom to the physicians. And so many conventional medical doctors being put into that box and criticized and being shamed and kicked out of the society for making their own medical freedom choices, not just on their bodies, but for respecting that freedom for their patients. So, it extends beyond just the individual that's making these choices for their own body, but also for the physicians to be able to say, well, I don't agree with that protocol. So I'm going to step out and see this is the research I'm doing on my patient population, and I feel safe enough to move forward to say, hey, we should be trying these things, and if my patients feel comfortable with that, they can move forward. If they feel more comfortable the other way, they can do that.
as well.
Sarah, I absolutely love your path of information instead of indoctrination, and I appreciate that. You know, Kathy, there's an election coming up, and of course, it's a political event in nature, I guess you'll say. But one thing that I've been trying to tell people at this convention and others, and on my show, is that it doesn't really matter who wins this next election. It matters. We want Trump to win. I do, for that matter, because I think that's going to take us in the correct decision. But when I say it doesn't matter, when it pertains to freedom, because what matters is how much control we take over our freedom. But either way, we have a decision to make in less than 30 days that I think will help us, give us power on either being able to give us more medical freedom or less medical freedom in some different decisions, I guess you'll say. What does it mean to you in this next election? How do you think they should choose their candidate based on this next election?
Well, this is a really hot topic amongst the medical community, especially on the chat boards that, I guess called chat boards, that we were all on with different physicians, not only here in Louisiana and other providers throughout the country. We don't like to mix politics with medicine at all, because it should absolutely be unrelated. But unfortunately, as Anthony and Sarah have already alluded to, it is very ingrained, unfortunately, and it has affected our entire healthcare system. Also, I would say that, none of us, well, I won't speak for them, but I feel certain that they probably would agree. We don't, I wouldn't want to endorse a specific candidate. I mean, what I'm looking at is behavior or policy in the past. And if these are the candidates that I have to choose from, I have to look at past actions, past behavior and policy, and how that affected me or, others who were looking to have autonomy in their health care. So you have to think about, okay, who enacted the mandates? Did anyone, pull back the reins on the mandates? I mean, what were the public actions that took place and that were evident? I mean, there's plenty of interviews and policy decisions that were made. So I think that's how everyone has to look at it. I think there's a clear delineation between those two, but I'm just going to say, a lot of providers, you're not very happy that Trump has not come out and publicly denounced what happened, right, with the whole COVID thing. So, things may or may not have happened for certain reasons, maybe some sort of strategy, who knows? We don't know, but, it's almost like it's not being, completely forthcoming with the public, and I think it's important.
Do you think that him bringing on Robert F. Kennedy is a hat tip for that? Like, it's kind of like, hey, look, you want to answer that? Because I know Robert F. Kennedy is a big medical freedom, was a big medical freedom candidate. Do you think that Robert F. Kennedy is a hat tip to the medical community?
Sure, but then there's things about Robert F. Kennedy that, the medical freedom community may not like as well. So, it's sort of a give and take, and people have to make a decision on what's most important to them from a healthcare perspective, from a health freedom perspective, when they're making those decisions. But
maybe
I think
maybe with their gut, so to speak, no pun intended, with their gut on who's going to give them the most medical freedom.
From their perspective, yes. And so I'll leave it at that, but you should absolutely ask these folks here.
That same question for you, Anthony.
So I'm going to be careful, but I'm going to be different. There is no freedom of healthcare without free speech. And free speech in our Bill of Rights defends offensive speech, lies, misinformation, disinformation. It defends hate speech, heinous, disgusting speech, and certainly defends information that goes contrary to the incorrect spewings of whatever is the narrative of the day that over time is consistently proven to be incorrect. But I know many people that have themselves been censored. I've been censored. Science cannot happen without free speech. You will not get to know more truth about the universe, the world, your healthcare, anything, because you end up in a stagnant hole where the only speech permitted and the only investigations permitted are those which are in the accepted place. But science itself works as questioning that narrative constantly by pursuing the truth, by engaging the world in an honest, open debate and dialogue. And so, if I were to encourage anybody in this room or anyone listening, I would say that in this election, the most important matter is to look at the candidates and listen for the propagandistic terms of misinformation, malinformation, anti-vax, climate denier, and is there a candidate that is using these terms and threatening the speech of those that are in the community? Or is there a candidate that says that they're going to allow their political opponents to speak? Because if you silence political speech that's the opposition to you, you will not have healthcare freedom, you will not have a scientific process to pursue truth and a greater knowledge of the world. So this is a very important election.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Sarah, what about yourself? I think you've got a very interesting answer to this that same question.
Well, honestly, RFK Jr. was Trump's saving grace for me. Not saying that I wouldn't vote for him because this is the option that we have, but for medical freedom, Trump tries to save himself by saying, I didn't force it, and he didn't. And that is the most important thing. I do think that Operation Warp Speed, if we're going to be completely honest, was so unsafe. So unsafe for the American people. It pushed, but it made aware of everything else. So it's not the brightest moment in his career, okay, and his political career, but it made light of all the other issues that were going on in the system, that have been going on, but it was made aware more so at that time. That you didn't have the freedom from certain politicians, that they wanted to demand that you had to take this, whether it had been studied or not, whether there was a risk or not. So it's just what Kathy was saying about look at their history. How many mandates did they require? Based on what? Based on what? No scientific data at all, but they wanted to throw out those terms over and over and over again. Science says this and that, and it's not, because of what Anthony was saying. Like, if we don't have the freedom, that freedom of speech, the freedom to share this information, you're not actually seeing both sides, and the studies that they're doing are so one-sided. So all of it is just, what I gathered from COVID time, honestly, and I tell this to everyone, the one thing I learned was that I don't know anything. And we don't know anything because everything is a lie. Who are we believing? But you can tell by the actions of the people, not by the words coming out of their mouth, but the actions. So everything that they were saying, that I double on it. I do like the action so far of RFK Jr. I do like where Trump is going. I do, like you could kind of pinpoint, but when we're looking specifically at medical freedom, there's definitely some question marks that come up. Well, what are they going to do when the time comes? But you can look at the history and did they mandate it? That's what we care about. Trump is not a doctor. Are we going to listen to him about our medical advice, what he says on TV? No, not necessarily. But is he mandating something that he doesn't understand is the question.
What I liked about the information that you all just said, your comments, is we have a lot of friends that may or may not like Trump for certain reasons, is that you have basically been able to help give another arrow in the quiver for people who may be on the fence. And when it comes to medical freedom, I think all of you have wonderful things. I love your answer about the First Amendment, because I think that's true. We need to be a candidate, because without the First Amendment, we have no medical freedom. But still in all, we go to the doctors, we see our nurses, we see our doctors, and they still say, hey, you should get the anti-sneeze vaccine. Your nurse might say, hey, I've noticed that you don't have the anti-sneeze vaccine, you don't have the anti-itch vaccine, you don't have the anti-toenail jam vaccine, and if you get this vaccine and have a side effect, we have another vaccine to treat the side effect. I find that nurses don't have, they don't have all the answers either. What do you all tell people to how they can navigate with their doctors or their nurses that may or may not be on the same side of the fence as you are or they are? Kathy?
I think this is one of the most difficult problems, hurdles, let me say, that we have right now. Because as Sarah, Dr. Duyon, alluded to when she said what we found out is we know nothing, I mean, that's truly how I felt, because learning the manipulation and the deception in the studies that were used to advocate for certain treatments or vaccinations and things like that. When you learn that isn't necessarily the truth, well then what else is it? And so it's very hard for providers to process that information, and that the history of this may have been going on for a very long time. So it's hard for healthcare professionals to accept that is actually occurring and has occurred. And so that's why you go to the doctor, and it seems like some are completely unaware of the events that have unfolded over the last several years. It's also training. Okay, it's also the references that healthcare providers use. When you go to the clinic and they may press you or discuss the anti-toe jam vaccine, they're going to go look in the medical reference that they have a subscription to, that most providers look at, and that information is still saying, get the vaccine, even though we know it's been proven. I'm referring to the COVID vaccine now, that it's not necessarily safe or effective, right? And so it's very difficult to try to, have a conversation with other professionals about it, because their medical Bible still says that this is accurate. You see, and so unless you've been able to lift the veil, unless providers have been able to lift the veil and see behind it, they are still living in this world where, everything is truth that is being presented to them as science. I hope that was sort of clear.
I understand completely.
Okay.
You do a great, you have a lot of information that you kind of, like almost like a shotgun blast, getting out there. So you have a lot of good information. And I think when people start to follow you a little bit more, they'll see some of this.
Well, let me just say this. So people are familiar with the term gaslighting, right?
Yes.
I think okay, so that is basically what is happening to providers who aren't aware of the alternative. And so they can't get out of that lane. I was in that lane. And I was in that lane at the beginning of COVID. Okay? And I was so in it. And then a few pieces of the wall began to crumble, and then I don't recall exactly what the moment was where the wall fell down, and then my life changed forever at that moment, but because I could see at that point. And so, go ahead.
Anthony, how about you? What's the best way to navigate between the doctors and the nurses and when they try to shove that toenail jam vaccine down our throats?
That's a tough question. So first of all, I think that, thank you for sharing your experience, Kathy. And I think many people have experienced that. I would say psychologically, what happens is, if you have a worldview, if I had more people in the audience, I would do this, an experiment on y'all, but there's less. So you will defend your worldview very, very, very rigorously. You will, no matter who you are. And the worldview that people that are trained in is, they've spent decades of their life, and there's a high stakes reward. And so for you to be able to see that there was a lot of deception, if you were able to see that there's a lot of deception, it predisposes you to ask the question, what else have they lied to me about? And that is something that normal human beings want to avoid at all costs. Because it's very, she just shared about that from Kathy. So for you, I think you have to do your own research and not trust the experts, no matter who the experts are. Whether I listen to the experts, whether I am the expert, whether you come to me about a question that I'm actually the expert in, which has to do with, kids and with behavior issues and navigating Louisiana's system with that. But you still need to verify and do your own research. But how can you do that if the government censures anything that's not approved, right?
Goes back to the First Amendment.
How can you even look to verify anything else? There will be no other stuff. You won't be able to look up Andrew Huberman's nutraceutical protocols to help, do some sauna or cold plunges to improve your health, or doing HIIT therapy if that is contrary to the narrative, because it's free.
And especially if the First Amendment gets taken away. Sarah, how about you? How would you navigate doctors and nurses based on their recommendations outside of the norm?
Well, first off, we may be the experts in our particular area of medicine, but I always tell people, you are the expert in your body. So it doesn't matter what any healthcare professional tells you, you have to see how your body responds to it. And that ultimately comes, it's a lesson that I have to teach people, even when they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s. What is your body telling you? What are the symptoms telling you? How are you responding to this negative, positive, whether it's your food, your medicines, your supplements, whatever. Once you learn that, you can navigate those things. The issue that we have is exactly what Anthony was saying was, well, it used to be if I would say, okay, hypertension and sauna, that I could get article after article when I search on Google. And now you'll get the first AI response, and this could be detrimental to your health, and it will cause your blood pressure to increase. You'll have to go 20 pages down to find information of how we've always known that in 1 month you can get rid of your hypertension if you do it for this many minutes a day at this temperature, because it's been studied. But now that's being pushed away. That's the most criminal thing that has happened since COVID. It has taken away that ability for the individual person to do their own research. So it makes it very difficult for you to make those decisions on your own, because you're being fed all of the lies. All of that is the misinformation that we're being fed, is that first 10 pages of stuff from the NIH or whatever. So what I tell people is listen to your body. And this is very controversial, but a lot of people will come in and their primary care physicians will say, well, I hope you didn't, Dr. Google or Instagram this or TikTok that. And I tell people, I welcome it. What'd you learn on TikTok? Because that's your individual providers and people that are sharing their own experiences. And I'm like, well, what did they talk about it now? Or who's doing that crazy cold plunge thing that he's talking about? And what about this magnesium? Bring that information to me so I can help you sift through it. Because honestly, that's what people are turning to, is the individual out there that's some Instagram, influencer that actually has more information than their healthcare providers, because they're not afraid to share it. So like that, I I welcome all of it. Why? Because you're so limited now on where you can get information compared to 5 years ago on these topics. So that's when I say, get this book. Share it with your friends. Start there, because then you'll find some truth there. And when you open that door, you realize the lies to everything else, and you say, wait a minute. So a statin really isn't going to help me if I have high cholesterol? Oh, it could actually be detrimental to my health. It could actually increase my chance of a heart attack. Well, that's not what I'm being told at that physician's office or through the NIH or through this article on PubMed. But this book gave me 18 articles that proved the other way.
I got off my statins 2 years ago. When I started finding this stuff out. And once again, it goes back to Anthony, it's First Amendment. And I love your answers, Sarah, about how you work with all your patients and you're on all the information you're getting to help them sift through it. I love that. But my next question, we're going to have to start getting a little bit shorter on some of our answers as we wrap some things up here on the panel, is what is the biggest corruption or the biggest thing that you've seen that is anti-medical freedom happen in the medical community?
Well, that's a lot, William. You're asking us at the end. We're running out of time. But, for me, from a provider's perspective, making decisions, it's the scientific fraud, which is where research has been manipulated, numbers have been manipulated, data has been manipulated in studies to give us an outcome that is beneficial to a certain business or a group, and not necessarily the outcome that reflects the true benefits and risks to patients. It's so dangerous. It's so anti-healthcare. I could list a bunch of others, but that is so critical. How can we possibly, I think we've illustrated that here or gotten that message across that, we don't know what we don't know. There's a lot that we have to re-explore because we're just not sure if the scientific data that we're working with and have worked with all of these years is completely accurate because of the corruption and that. So I'll stop there.
I love it. How about you, Anthony?
This is the biggest, what was the question?
What do you think is the biggest corruption, or the biggest corrupt thing, or most corrupt thing you've seen against freedom, against medical freedom in the industry?
Allowing pharmaceutical companies to have to pay for advertisement direct to consumers. Hands down. Because what happens is those advertisements, they don't care whether you ask me in the clinic for whatever, psych med or something that's going to help your kid with ADHD. What they care about is the revenue stream percentages in the media so they can control and fire the talking head that challenges the narrative. And so, because any media corporation is beholden to their customers, and it's not you, the people consuming, you're the product that's being sold when you watch TV. It's the people that are paying for the advertising dollars that they're beholden to. And so in our country and in New Zealand are the only two places in the world, the last time I checked, that allows pharmaceutical companies to manipulate the markets and attack any narrative by silencing it on the media, because they own the media through the advertisements that make the media beholden to them. Watch and stream something on, one of these streaming services, or go and turn on your cable news, or turn on whichever side. Razzle dazzle, berry blue, it doesn't matter. Why is that? That's the number. If I were going to say the number one thing, I'm going to agree with, there's a lot of number one things, and they did probably committed crimes against humanity, but I think that we all need to demand that our local legislators and our national legislators change that law. MAGA needs to demand freedom from pharmaceutical influence in the commercialization of their products through advertisements.
Love that answer. I'll tell you my personal story why I love that answer so much is a while back I saw a pharmaceutical company advertising a whatever medicine it was, and it said this medicine will treat this problem, but if you get the side effects from the medicine, we have another medicine, and they named it, that will treat the side effects from this medicine. And if that to me was not a public admission that their medicine is probably going to cause you problems, and that they're not trying to feed another one for their profit in their advertising.
It has to do with, I believe that it doesn't matter what they're advertising. It matters that they're spending a fraction of their massive profits in controlling and silencing any narrative that would question them. So I don't think they necessarily care about selling you the product. That's why they buy me lunches. You all can look me up and find out however many little bit of money they bought lunches for my staff. But that's where they're actually marketing the products. The reason they have the advertising direct to the public is to silence and control the media narratives in any necessary format. And that needs to stop.
How about you, Sarah? What have you seen?
So piggybacking on that, FDA, CDC, NIH, and government officials should not be one and the same. There shouldn't be the top people at any of these letter organizations as politicians or having any kind of influence on what is allowed and not allowed, especially if they work for maybe some of the companies like the pharmaceutical companies. Now, how can you have somebody on the board of FDA that also is on the board of a pharmaceutical company? It should not ever be allowed, and that is the conflict of interest that is happening here should never be allowed. Probably one of the things that RFK Jr. talks about most. This is not an overlapping. There's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. No conflict of interest. So we have the best interests of the people in mind, so the studies are conducted in the appropriate way. So we know that it's safe or we know that it's effective, not because it's what's going to make me a little bit more money. So I'll just leave it.
No, I have one more question, then a final quick question after that. But to your point, you made the point of how public officials should not also be in, I said, like the FDA or other organizations. We were going to have another guest this weekend who couldn't make it, who talks about how the patent system is under attack in America. And what's happening is the president is now allowed to appoint somebody to run the patent office, and the last few presidents have appointed people to run the patent office that were also executives at Google or Facebook, and so they've noticed that certain tech patents by the little guys did not get approved because the Google executive might not have approved a certain patent, but another Google person got the same patent. So it's kind of the same thing that's going on in government in general. Great point, Sarah. Great information, Kathy. I know you always have great information. Final big question is, what do you think that people can do to take control of their medical freedom?
I think we're at a bit of a crossroads because people are looking for an expert to rely on. And I think you have to be very careful in doing that. I think what we should all do is hone our skill on critical thinking. I think we shouldn't all put our eggs in one basket. Say, the medical expert du jour who's coming out even on our side, because there's been some folks that maybe wasn't the true expert or maybe had some ulterior motives for what they were advocating for. So without naming any names, I think we have to be really careful in doing that, because we got in this position by doing that very thing our whole lives, right? As a physician, I put all my eggs in the CDC basket, the FDA, and NIH, because they are the expert agencies and the authority that we looked up to. But we have to remember that those institutions are easily corruptible. People are easily corruptible. It just happens, and it's human nature. Unfortunately, we've learned, over the past several years. So I'm not giving an easy answer. I'm not giving an easy action to go take. But I think that moving forward, if we don't hone our skill at critical thinking and using our common sense, listening to our gut, like you mentioned earlier, no pun intended, I think that will take us a lot further than just blindly accepting what anyone says. This is absolutely what you need to do, no questions asked. I've researched it all. You need to do your own research, and you need to think about how you're going to process information and then act on it, and make a habit of doing it and practice that.
I love that answer. You're absolutely amazing. Thank you very, very much. Anthony?
Okay, so what can you do for your medical freedom? I think that if and when there's another push for some form of a global totalitarian push, we need to learn from my grandparents, from those who survived. And what you need to do is do what all humans are made to do. Whether you believe we're made through some, evolutionary atheistic process, or from our good benevolent creator who made us in his image and likeness, we are made as human beings to do real things with real people in the real world. And we need to do it eating real food. And so you should stop eating artificial flavorings. You should get 20 minutes of sun a day.
In the morning.
You should drink water that's not tainted with chemicals that poison you. These are, and who knows what they are, I don't know either, but we need to make sure that our water is not poisoned. We need to live life by having real connections that are deep with small communities that we can trust, right? And have interconnected circles where we can all know each other and have real, that's what community is. Community, you know the name of the people in your community. It's not an amorphous giant thing. It's not something the size of this city. It is your community is the group of people that you know their name, you know their kids, you know where they worship, whether you worship there or not. You know who they are. That's community, and that's what we need. And we need to not let them violate our rights and claim that ever again.
Awesome. Sarah, how about yourself?
Just say no. Thank you. Just say no. You don't like what your doctor's telling you, you don't feel comfortable with it, you say no thank you. I'll try to find someone else. You don't feel comfortable wearing a mask, you say no. The more people that feel convicted and actually follow through and say no, guess what happens? The collective no. Okay? Their fear is when we all come together and we're not afraid of them anymore, and we do what we want to do, what we feel, that freedom, and then that overpowers that select few that think that they are in power. I had a friend once that traveled all around the world. She was originally from Ukraine, and at the time I spoke to her, she was in a socialist country. And I told her, well, I don't think I want to go and move there and live there because they're socialist. She said, Sarah, it's about the people, not about the government. Because they told us, wear a mask. And no one's wearing a mask. I walk around the market and no one wants to, so they're not going to. It doesn't matter what the government is saying or the type of government, it's about the people. And when we empower ourselves with listening, convicting ourselves, and we actually step up and say, no, I am not doing that. I don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable with that. Or let me do some research and see if what I find out about it, and I'll come back. I'll consider that. But what you're saying is not the law. What you're saying is not a Bible to me. What you're saying is just something I might consider. And then come up with your own answer and not use their fear that drives you to be forced into something. And when we take that power, it's not like one very specific thing. It's just understanding you do have that power and that knowledge within you. And if you're not afraid, you can say no. And you can make your own decision.
Sarah, thank you for being amazing. How do people find out about you? If you have any information that you'd like to share, do you have a Substack or anything like that?
So I'm in Baton Rouge, and my clinic is called Illuminate Natural Health. And so it's the same name across the board. .com, at Instagram, yada, yada, yada.
Love it. Anthony, how about yourself?
I have a Substack, though I don't have a lot of time to write in it, but anthonyAPRN.com.
I love it. How about you, Kathy?
I don't have a Substack or anything like that, like this amazing genius brain over here. But anyway, I mean, I'm on X, and that's about it.
All right.
Well,
you guys are going to be here. You are going to be here afterwards, I guess, for a little while. I invite people to go to speak to you, ask you questions, engage with you. I want to thank you all so much for this panel. I really do. Thank you very much for putting it together. Appreciate you. All right, guys. I'll see you all. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. This is the reason why I think we need medical freedom. You heard lots of great information up here. And you've heard how you can empower yourself to not only take control of your health and medical freedom, but how important that is in strengthening the muscle of your First Amendment right.